Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating and, frankly, a very controversial diplomatic tool. It's called the Snapback Mechanism. Now, it was designed to be this brilliant safety net for international agreements, but right now, it's acting a lot more like a doomsday clock, ticking down to a major global crisis.
And its activation forces us to ask a really big question. Are we actually watching the final nail-in-the-coffin end of the historic 2015 Iran nuclear deal? The answer, let me tell you, has massive implications for global security that go way, way beyond just the Middle East.
So here's what happened. In late August 2025, the three big European players in the deal, that's Britain, France, and Germany, who we often just call the E3, they took a huge, really drastic step. They officially triggered the snapback mechanism against Iran.
Iran's reaction was, well, immediate and just as severe. Its parliament started drafting laws that could pull the country completely out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. Now, this is not a small threat, okay? The NPT is the absolute bedrock of all global efforts to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. For Iran to leave it, that would be a complete game changer, a massive escalation.
And just like that, a clock starts ticking at the United Nations. A formal 30-day countdown is on. The whole world is watching, tensions are sky high, and honestly, what happens in these next few weeks could change the face of global security for a generation. The stakes? They couldn't be higher.
Okay, so to make sense of this whole high-stakes showdown, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at what this snapback thing actually is, how its unique veto-proof design works, and then we'll get into the big debate, its incredible power versus its immense risks. All right, let's get into it.
First things first, what exactly is this tool that's brought us all to the edge of our seats?
Okay, think of the snapback mechanism like this. It's basically an automatic reversal switch that's built right into an agreement. If one country thinks another has broken its promises, any of the participants can just flip this switch. And when they do, bam, all the old penalties, in this case, those crippling United Nations sanctions, they automatically and immediately snap back into place. It's a tool that's most famous for being part of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which is officially called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA.
Now, the original deal back in 2015 was a pretty historic bargain. You had Iran on one side and the P5+1 on the other. That's the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. The trade-off was simple, really. Iran promised to seriously scale back its nuclear program to make sure it was only for peaceful purposes. In return, the world powers agreed to lift the really heavy economic sanctions that had pretty much cut off Iran's economy for years. But, and this is the big but, to make sure Iran kept its end of the bargain, the negotiators built in this snapback mechanism. It was the ultimate insurance policy.
But here's the thing. This wasn't just any safety net. Its design is, well, it's revolutionary because it was built to get around the single biggest roadblock in international politics, the veto. And that is what makes this thing both brilliant and, incredibly dangerous.
To really get why this is so clever, you have to understand the main problem the negotiators in 2015 were trying to solve. And that problem is the veto power at the UN Security Council. See, they knew that countries like Russia and China might not be so keen to punish Iran. The big fear was, what if Iran cheats? Its allies could just use their veto to block any attempt to bring back sanctions. So the question was, how on earth do you build an enforcement tool that cannot be blocked?
And the solution they came up with? It was pure genius. They just flipped the entire logic of the UN Security Council on its head. Okay, look, normally to impose sanctions, you need yes votes. That means a veto from Russia or China could block them. Simple. But with snapback, the sanctions come back automatically unless the Council votes to continue the relief. This means a country that wants the sanctions back, like France in this case, can just veto the resolution to continue relief, so a veto, which usually stops action, now guarantees it. And that, right there, is what makes it veto-proof. It's brilliant.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? The whole process is laid out in UN Resolution 2231, and it follows a really strict 4-step path that leads to automatic sanctions. It all kicks off when one of the participants in the deal, like the E3 nations did, sends a formal letter to the UN Security Council. They don't even have to prove their case. They just have to say they believe Iran is in significant non-performance. That one letter starts the 30-day clock. Now, during this time, the Security Council has to vote on a resolution. But remember that upside-down logic we talked about? The vote is to continue sanctions relief. So if that resolution fails for any reason, say because the country that complained vetoes it themselves, then on day 31, it's game over. All 6 of the previous really tough UN sanctions just snap right back into place.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. 30 days. This isn't some long, drawn-out negotiation that goes on for months. No, it's a rapid-fire, high-stakes countdown that is designed for one thing: speed and certainty. This is the only window for any last-minute diplomatic scramble to find a way out, to de-escalate, to save anything from the deal. It's a period of just intense, non-stop pressure. All right, so now that we've got a handle on what the snapback is and how it works, we can take a step back and really analyze it. It's obviously a very powerful invention. But is it a brilliant diplomatic tool that keeps everyone honest, or is it a reckless weapon that just risks blowing up the whole thing?
Well, the people who support it say it's a major innovation. For one, it makes agreements credible, right? It's not just a promise on paper anymore. There's a real, unavoidable consequence if you break the rules. Second, it creates what experts call coercive diplomacy. The threat of snapback alone is a powerful lever to force a country's hand. And because of this, some people see it as a model, a blueprint for future arms control deals, especially in situations where, let's be honest, trust is pretty low.
And look, this isn't just some abstract political drama. This stuff has real-world economic consequences that people feel everywhere. Just a threat of sanctions on a major oil producer like Iran creates huge volatility in the market. Global crude oil prices can jump by 5, even 10% almost overnight. Now, for a major energy importing country like India, this is not a faraway problem. It directly increases our national import bill, it fuels inflation, and it hits the wallets of everyday people. So the power of this tool is felt far beyond the UN meeting rooms.
But of course, there is a very strong case against it which highlights the danger. The biggest risk is escalation. As we're seeing right now with Iran's threat to leave the NPT, triggering snapback can end up destroying the very deal it was supposed to protect. It's like a break glass in case of emergency button that shatters the entire building. It also creates huge political fallout, making the divide between Western powers and countries like Russia and China even deeper. Plus, some people question how much impact it can even have today, since US sanctions are already so tough. And finally, its legitimacy has been questioned, especially after the US tried to use it in 2020 after it had already left the deal.
So when you put it all side by side, the difference is just night and day. Standard sanctions are slow, they need everyone to agree, and a single veto can stop them. Snapback is fast, it can be started by just one party, and it's designed so that a veto actually triggers the action. Its purpose isn't to debate a new threat, it's to automatically enforce an old promise. It's a completely different animal in the world of diplomacy.
And all of this brings us right back to where we started. With this unstoppable mechanism now rolling forward and the 30-day countdown ticking away, where do we go from here? Are we just watching the final formal implosion of the Iran nuclear deal?
So what happens now? Well, that 30-day window is the last desperate chance to find some kind of off-ramp. It will need immediate de-escalation from everyone involved to avoid a much bigger conflict. But realistically, with the original deal in shreds, the real challenge is what comes next. Trying to somehow build a new, better agreement from the ashes of the old one. And let me tell you, that is going to be incredibly difficult to do with the shadow of global sanctions hanging over everything.
You know, in the end, this quote really captures the whole paradox of the snapback. It's a double-edged sword. It was created to be this tough tool to enforce an agreement, but using it has become the very thing that causes the agreement's total collapse. It is both the guardian and, in a way, the executioner of the deal.
And so we're left with this fundamental question. As the world watches this diplomatic clock tick down, the legacy of this powerful invention is going to be decided by what happens next. Was the snapback mechanism, in the end, a guarantor of peace? Or did its brilliant but unforgiving design become a trigger for a new and much more dangerous chapter of confrontation?